Richard, do you happen to know whether the Fremont group will be meeting on New Year's Eve?
No, I don't. Sorry.
We can begin. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sanghang namasami. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Dear friends, we are very close to the winter solstice, and for a pretty long amount of time, like a couple of weeks, the length of the day is almost exactly identical from one day to the next. This is the opposite of the time of year at the spring or fall equinox, when the length of daylight is changing by a lot every single day. It's a few minutes different than the day before. But now, at the solstice, there's a certain way in which nature seems to be standing still. And I believe that this is one reason why, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, it's rather easier for humans to come to stillness at this time of year, that something is calling us to be quiet, to, in effect, I'm not going to say to hibernate, but to come to a point of rest. All the work that the farmer had to do in sowing his crop and cultivating and harvesting and gathering the food up in the fall and preserving, preparing all the food that he harvested. All of that work is finished, and there's not very much left to do now in the dead of winter, except perhaps someone might repair their tools, or they they just have to milk the cow. That's all. I don't know whether it's really true or not, but I heard that in Japan, the Japanese farmers would take up writing poetry during the wintertime when they had a break from the extremity of the labor and work that they had during the summer. We sometimes have had this conversation here at the Sangha. There's a certain amount of chores that we have to do, and sort of like as a joke, we said, well, did we manage to do what needed to be done, what was to be done this week? But of course, that's an epithet for the full enlightenment of an arahant, is the person who is the katang karaniyam. What was to be done has been done, it's finished, and then can come to rest. without being materialistic or grandiose or greedy about nibbana, it seems to me that it's very helpful to reflect about nibbana in our meditation in order to get our own aspirations oriented in the right way. So my suggestion for this meditation today is to meditate on peace. Uh, it's normal for the mind to become activated sometimes. It's normal for the mind to proliferate with thoughts and sensations. But if we are inclining to peace, we can simply forgive that activity when it comes along. And we can very clearly choose not to pick up on that kind of activation. I don't know whether any of you have had this experience in meditation, those who have been meditating for a long time, for many years. It could happen from time to time that there's the appointed hour that comes for meditation. And we were, in the middle of something, and a person may come and sit down at the meditation cushion, and some thoughts come along, like the problems that we want to worry about. And it's possible, if you don't value that meditation hour, it's possible to choose just, I shall sit here and worry about these problems. Or I shall sit here and daydream about something pleasurable. Or I shall sit here and ruminate on some kind of obsession or other of the mind. It is possible to do that. And it's also very possible to just say, enough. We've had enough of worrying. We've had enough of rumination. We'd have enough of drifting along in daydreams. Now is the time to be still. So with that preliminary idea, let's come to a balanced and upright posture for meditation. Making the decision to let go of agitation and thoughts and worries. There's nothing to do now but rest in awareness. Aware of this physical body. Feeling the pressure of the body pressing on the floor or the seat. Aware of the upright posture. Aware of the position of the hands, the back, the head, the torso. Reviewing the sensations in the body and relaxing. The muscles in the body. Just keeping enough energy to remain upright. Thinking, may I be free of anger. And letting go of that. May I be free of ill will. And letting go of that. May I be free of anxiety. And letting go of that. I'm at ease with the way it is right now. aware of the breath. And with each breath, letting go of agitation. And with each breath, resting in peace. The breath is moving, but the mind is still peaceful. sitting in direct awareness without verbalizing. Peaceful, letting go, breathing in and breathing out. Dear friends, today in the world, we could look around and notice that the world is not peaceful. There are so many horrible situations of parents and children in real agony because of human cruelty and violence. So it's a kind of a normal thing at this time of year at all times of year for persons who are dedicated to peace, but especially at this season, there's this kind of idea comes along. Well, would it be possible for humanity to turn away from the ways of war and conflict and to become peaceful? It's obvious that humanity at war is something that has happened many times. And it's also true that there have been moments of real peace and solidarity among humans at a larger scale. This is at the materialistic or the social level. For those of us who are practicing the Dhamma according to the way that was taught by the Buddha, we may or may not be in a place where we have the opportunity to be present or to have a voice related to these social problems. But regardless of what our position is, what kind of opportunities we have in the world, nevertheless, we have the opportunity in our own practice to gain a completely different level of inner peace, which is unshakable. And any person who has that, who gains that, will it be a tremendous influence on anybody that they encounter, not to mention having gained the opening for their own escape from dukkha. In the sequence that's very often given in the suttas, we do the work first until the work has been done. What is the work? The work is the work of purification, the work of recognizing how dukkha works. Dukkha is like all the different ways that persons can make themselves agitated, and all the different ways that people can build up this grasping for life, grasping to go round and round on this merry-go-round. It's like there's a whole city of dukkha with many passageways and many houses and many byways and many different things. You could spend your whole career just studying dukkha, but we would like to study the end of dukkha. And so this work of looking within, recognizing those kinds of ways of thinking which support proliferation, agitation, anxiety, and greed and delusion, and becoming really disenchanted with that whole pattern, at the same time that we know that it's natural to our species. So it's kind of like a pattern that that comes easily for somebody who was born as a human being, but nevertheless, one can become so disenchanted, so disappointed, so just not interested in perpetuating that anymore. That's a big part of the work, is to drop the what all of the justifications a person has. Well, they think, they need to have a certain amount of greed. They need to have a certain amount of conceit. They need to have a certain amount of aggression. They need to have a certain amount of clinging. They need to have a certain amount of attachment. People might have those delusions, but part of our work is to go beyond and to become disenchanted, give up those delusions. And then uh, it's like the curtain has opened, or a light has come into a space that was dark. And it's possible to understand and see how our experience really works, how we work, to see it more clearly. And so that's seeing that vipassana. That's another part of the work. But in the end, uh, the description is that uh, one learns to let go, stage by stage by stage, peeling the onion, every layer going deeper and deeper, and letting go of clinging to anything whatsoever that has to do with preservation of this self-identification or attachment at any level. And with those levels of letting go, the ability to see clearly becomes more and more well established and well developed, until finally there's this Pali word called viraga, which is often translated as fading away, sometimes translated as dispassion, where the way that the five khandhas affected by clinging are continuously becoming aroused and becoming activated, that doesn't work anymore. It just stops. And then with that uh, viraga, one can experience truly letting go. One can experience the real cessation, the real nirodha, which doesn't mean that one thing ceases and another thing starts. It doesn't mean that you um, eh, that life is just one thing after another, and you watch the impermanence of first you're sad and then you're not sad, and then you're sad and then you're not sad, and then you're angry and then you're not angry, and then you're upset and then you're not upset, and you see the different moods and feelings and tones of the day. It's just continuously going through their changes. Uh, that's not what's meant by cessation. It is true that things are continuously arising and ceasing, and it's wonderful. It's great. It's really useful to be able to see that. But the kind of cessation that we're talking about, which is peaceful, sublime, excellent, which is an epithet of uh, uh, nibbana, is the um, cessation of dukkha, or the cessation of any kind of identification. And at that point, it's said in the text that one knows that craving has ceased. So craving has ceased, and one knows the craving has ceased. One knows that what had to be done has been done. One knows that there's no more coming to birth. This uh, description of awakening of arahantship is repeated many, many, many times in the suttas, hundreds of times. Most of the suttas, many, many suttas describe in one version or another version the trajectory of the path of practice, starting with a person who's caught up in affliction and the ordinary suffering, who hears the Dhamma, becomes interested, does the work, follows the path, follows, one version of, there's several different versions of the path of practice, like the psychological evolution of one who's a trainee along the way, and then in the end it describes awakening. That's what this practice is for. That's where it's going to. This week coming up, we're going to be celebrating or recalling the ordination of Anula, who was a queen of Sri Lanka, who undertook the ordination, the bhikkhuni ordination that was offered to her by King Asoka's daughter, Sanghamitta. And Anula heard the Dhamma, gained the Noble Path, undertook the bhikkhuni form, and she was surrounded by 500 other noble ladies from good families and 500 other women who were members of the household. And it's written that all 1,000 of them became arahants. Think of that. We're in such a desert today, we might or might not think that it's credible that there's even one or two or three arahants in the whole world that are living today that we've heard about. But when we know that enlightenment is possible and we orientate our whole lives towards that, then we can look back to the past and we can know that it's possible. It's possible for a man. It's possible for a woman. It's possible for an old person. It's possible for a young person. It's even possible for a child. It's possible for someone of any class or caste or someone of any education. If we're so lucky to have a functioning mind and to encounter the Dhamma and hear the Dhamma, and so lucky to have the ability to pick up these instructions and follow this way of practice. Yes, it's possible. And we may know that whoever wakes up, even whoever gains any of the noble levels, they're going to be a different kind of cat altogether, a different kind of person. They're going to be someone who has a vessel of peacefulness in this poor, terrible world that we have right now. So the world that we have is, it's called, in the Pali tradition, it's called a kama loka. Yes, the world that we're in now, that's the world that's characterized by desire, and by the desire based on the five senses. So in this poor world, it's still possible to obtain that kind of real peace, to become a sage. And I don't know for each and every one of you, I think that some of us really have got that orientation, that we're really practicing for the goal. And perhaps for some who are in the room right now, practicing for the goal is something that they could hardly even really comprehend what that might signify. But if you don't comprehend what it might signify, if you when you read the sutta, there's the first part of the sutta that's talking about all the troubles of someone who's still got a lot of mental defilements and a lot of personality problems and a lot of difficulties in learning how to cope with those difficulties, and learning the first stages of the path, or someone who's just learning how to establish their sila, or just learning how to establish meditation, just learning how to practice loving kindness, and realizing those fruits. But then when you come to the last few paragraphs or a couple of paragraphs of the sutta where it talks about enlightenment, if you sort of like skip over that part because you don't know what they're talking about, I'm saying this because I know it's true for some people, because it used to be true for me, that I didn't know, I didn't have a clue when I first encountered Buddhism. I had no clue about enlightenment. I just was lucky to meet a bhikkhu teacher who was very accomplished, and I knew that bhikkhu had something. I wanted to get what that bhikkhu had, but I had no idea what it was. Now, because of reading the suttas many thousands of times, and making the best effort in my own humble way to practice according to those instructions, I have enough of a clue to be able to speak to you in this way, and to encourage you to know that peace on earth for you would really be when you wake up. Then you shall have peace on earth. This is a very short reflection. I'd be happy to hear any questions or comments. Mm. Okay, I'll call on Nita and or Saket.
Yes, thank you very much, Aya, for the meditation today. I was just wondering, at the beginning, uh, like actually my mind was quite agitated and all over the place, so very apt for me today. And I was wondering in the beginning when you mentioned that we should, I think, choose peace or work towards peace, if I got that correct. I was just thinking, doesn't that kind of try and kind of change our current reality? That if you're agitated, we just let it roll and just like it's anatta, so we don't try to like move, force it towards peace. So, any advice there, please?
Uh, this is a very excellent question, and it's certainly true that one can go too far trying to be like a Nazi against our own self. If the mind is agitated, then, like we're the teacher with the ruler that's going to try to slap that agitation until it gets quiet. And that's not what's meant or what's called for. But it's also possible to go too far in the other direction. Sometimes sama sati, right mindfulness, in the Western Vipassana and training, or in the secular Buddhism, they explain mindfulness as non-judgmental awareness. So if you feel jealous, you're aware of that. If you feel greedy, you're aware of that. Whatever it's for a way for, especially for young people and students to become emotionally skillful because they're able to recognize their own emotions. But actually, mindfulness includes being able to distinguish those that are bright and those that are dark. Those patterns which lead to affliction for oneself, affliction for others, affliction for both, and those which do not cause any affliction for anybody. And just simply being able to recognize that difference. See, now here, we're not yet bringing out the heavy punishment or something to try to use force on ourselves, but simply trying to recognize that this is beneficial or this is not beneficial. And then if you can see that clearly, that like the agitated mind is not beneficial, then you don't really want to stay there. But if you don't see clearly that it's not beneficial, then you do want to stay there. So whether you stay or don't stay in a state of mind that's not beneficial, is usually based on some kind of a delusion or an excuse or a justification or rationalization, or some kind of like a careless belief that makes us think that these states are either are not harmful, not really harmful, or that these states are good for us. So then the first step is like a complete, honest investigation, using complete honesty. But then it's also true, even if you get to be honest with yourself and you recognize your own, if a person, this is not about you anymore, this is just general. If a person recognizes their own bad habits and still those bad habits persist, then there's an old song that I used to, before I got ordained, I used to listen to music. The refrain is, "Oh, why can't you be good?" or why can't he be good, something like that, and do just what he should. So that's kind of like what it is with our mind. Say, why can't the mind be good? Why can't it do what it should? But then I think there is a point where you, after being able to see clearly what habits are, like negative habits are still there, that finally a person can come to say, okay, it's enough. It's enough. It's enough, no more. Stop. And so there's a place for that, but it doesn't mean that one is you're punishing yourself or trying to use too much force. Otherwise, you can be like students who learn this secular mindfulness, and so then like they were like really angry 25 years ago, and they learned how to be mindful of their anger. And now 25 years later, they're still getting angry all the time, and they're mindful of their anger. So, you know, but what was the point of that? So so that's not the reason why the Buddha taught us mindfulness.
So then, Aya, it is being mindful and also being aware whether this is leading to a good direction or not a good direction, and just being aware of these two, and somewhere intending that we would like to go towards the wholesome or towards the good.
Yeah, you will go towards the good naturally once you see it clearly. All beings have the desire for happiness.
Yeah.
Once you see it clearly, you don't need to use force.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Aya.
Yeah. This is what the Buddha taught in the Dvaita Vitakka Sutta, the two kinds of thought. I'm tempted to and ask them to explain what I was trying to say in different language. But first I'll call on Elaine.
I'm going to lose my voice. Thank you, Aya, for being here tonight and giving us this opportunity to carry on our practice as we normally would. It's going to be a memorable Christmas Eve for me. There's nothing worse than knowing something is wrong in your heart and having the world tell you, "Oh no, that's good, that's good," and that's what Buddhism has given me, just the opportunity. I don't have to lie to myself. It's not psychotic. Um, and thank you for being so consistent and always being there for us.
Were you thinking of what to say, Venerable? I'm going to call on Venerable Katyayana.
No, I didn't have a particular comment. Is there something you'd like me to comment on in particular? Hmm. Yeah, well, I guess I'm also reflecting on Saket's question and what you were saying about how mindfulness works. the seeing the wholesome and as opposed to the unwholesome, and not just being angry and mindful of your anger. Like I think just being mindful of the anger is the first step. If you don't know it's there, then there's nothing to be done about it. And I think, for myself, and I think for a lot of people, it can be hard even to identify those sorts of things at the beginning of practice, to even know what are you feeling. So there's actually important work to be done there for a lot of people, just to be able to even see and identify. But obviously it can't stop there, because just to know that one is angry is not enough, because you want to escape from the anger, escape from any of these unwholesome states. So you have to be able to identify them as unwholesome. Yeah, I mean, I think there's like two different strands in the Buddha's teaching. One is in the in the Satipatthana Sutta. It says just being aware of the mental states as they come and go, just knowing what's there and what's not. And in that sutta, it doesn't say, "Oh, abandon anger." It just says, "Be aware when anger is there." So there is that instruction in that particular place. And then there's also many other suttas where it says how to abandon things. That there are antidotes, that there are escapes from these, the three poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. So the antidote to hatred is kindness, loving kindness, metta. And, so then there are all these instructions to counter it and to abandon it, and different ways to do that. So I don't know, to me, in a way, it feels like there's this tension between these two different ways of relating to our mental states. And both are necessary in a way. There has to be just the basic awareness, but also there has to be the willingness to move away from what's there, but not with, not with putting more hatred on it, not with adding anything else, just not with aversion to what's there, but somehow just being able to see it and drop it. Just to find the escape through seeing clearly, and also have the intention to move away. I don't know. So I don't have a conclusion here, just my sort of reflection about that tension, but how there is, over time, it becomes clearer how to actually relate to both of those ways, those ways of practice, and how to find the escape through the mindfulness. So that's what was on my mind. Thank you.
I don't quite see this in the suttas, but it seems to me that the modern idea of forgiveness has something to do with that, when what arises within us is because we're a human being. And we've got all of the conditions and the conditioning that come from our human state. And so then we can't be resentful or rejecting and saying, like, I don't agree with this. Is what we've got right now is the culmination of all the causes and conditions that came before. And so there is something in this, a peaceful mind that whatever arises, that in us and in others, that there is this complete compassionate forgiveness, not having any resentment towards the states, even those states that are not beneficial states. I'm going to call on Richard.
Thank you, Ayya. So the bhikkhuni who just spoke said about anger not being being recognized in the Satipatthana Sutta, but not, I don't know how to put it, not dealt with, I guess. So I took a quick look. So I don't see anger there. I see ill will being mentioned in terms of Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. So let's go to the one before that because he abbreviates them. So the words are, it says, and how does a bhikkhu abide contemplating mind objects as mind objects? Now this is, I believe it's Dhamma, Dhammas, plural. If you look at the Pali.
Which is, I think
In terms of-
Veeramakachana is referring to the Chittanupassana. Which is the state of mind affected by ill will. But I was going to say exactly the point that Richard was going to bring out. In the Dhammanupassana, there's a different instruction. But please go ahead, Richard, with what you were going to talk about.
So here, there being sensual desire in him, like I said, let's look at that because the ill will is abbreviated. In him, a bhikkhu understands there's sensual desire in me, or there being no sensual desire in him, he understands there is no sensual desire in me. And he also understands how there comes to be the arising of unarisen sensual desire and how there comes to be the abandoning of the arisen sensual desire and how there comes to be the future non-arising of abandoned sensual desire. Now, for me, when things like sensual desire or anger, in a sense, anger for me seems to come up a lot less than sensual desire. There's a formula that the Buddha uses, which is this sensual desire, this thought of sensual desire is not good for me. It's not good for the other. It's not good for any of us. And when I recite this formula in my mind, it actually causes the sensual desire to just dissipate and anger as well. Because, and I think the reason is that we feel a justification for these things, like they're a part of us, right? This is my desire, you know what I mean? So, but when you look at it this way, you're looking at the sensual desire or the anger as an object. So you've separated out subject and object, and therefore it becomes something else, which is not really a part of you, and that allows it just to dissipate because you see that it's not good for you. You know what I mean? This thing is not good for me. Okay, so but not just for me, but for others as well. And so that's that altruistic frame of mind, right? Because if we have sensual desire for another being in the world or anger or whatever, we're literally binding that other being to continuing samsara in order for us to have this interaction with them. So this desire to want to have some kind of interaction with another being and bind them, you know, to samsara. So that's where it's not good for them as well, because they would have to be bound up in samsara for us to be having this kind of interaction, whether it's a sensual desire or an anger. So by making it a subjective, objective situation, it seems to make the mind automatic, at least for me, I don't know, others might want to try this technique if they haven't done it before. It really just allows it to just kind of separate itself out from you and just kind of dissipate and settle down. That's one point I wanted to make. The other point is, in the last class on Sunday, I mentioned that I found Buddha talking about parinibbana, but not in terms of just end. It was one sutra I stumbled upon. I was looking something up totally unrelated, and it just happened to be in that section of Pali that I looked at. So I spent some time since then looking at I started with the Dignikaya, just to see if that appears elsewhere like that. And I found it many places in the Dignikaya, and not just in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. It's in there a lot, but I mean in other suttas, the same pattern as well. And the translator, and that was a totally different translator than Bhikkhu Bodhi, Maurice Walsh, I think is his name. And he also just, when he gets to that, he just translates Nibbana. So I'm very curious as to how this came about. And I'm not saying this is true, but it made me begin to contemplate the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. Now we think of Mahaparinibbana Sutta as, because Maha, it's very long, but all the suttas in the Dignikaya are long. So it made me think that maybe it's called Mahaparinibbana because it's the Buddha's final ending, right? It's like the grand finale of a show, right? You get to the very ending. It's called the grand finale, Maha, right? And final Nibbana, right? Pari, Pari and Nibbana. So it's kind of like the grand, final Nibbana of the Buddha, as opposed to just being an extra long sutta on the Buddha's Pari Nibbana. Anyway, it's just I'm not saying that's true or not true, but the contemplating it, the thought came to me that it might really reflect that more, as opposed to just when he uses just plain Parinibbana in other places in the sutta as having described one who has arrived at arahantship. Anyways, that's just an idea, just to follow up on that concept. Thank you very much for listening.
These kinds of discussions, like what Richards is bringing out, are actually very useful, and I'm grateful that there are a number of intelligent and curious people who are reading the suttas carefully with a fresh eye, seeing, it's always been explained this way, but that's not actually what the sutta is saying. How can that be? And then, really investigating and exploring. And this is not just a useless activity of, playing mind games with the teachings or doing something other than trying to work out our own liberation, but actually it can be very beneficial because it's possible that the tradition in some ways will have come to some particular way that the teachings are explained that's actually less useful than what actually is stated that's right there in the suttas themselves. So I do appreciate sometimes discovering people who have done such careful and creative thinking based on looking at the suttas directly. I don't know if do you participate in the discourse section of Sutta Central, Richard? If you participated in discourse,
I've looked at it a number of times.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, I'll look at the title of some thing that's going on and I'll read it. But honestly, I don't have a tendency to want to get into the fray. It's like you talk about something, I think sometimes Dharma, was it Dharma buddies or something? I think you brought it up. There's something you've talked about. And I've seen that as well. I know what you're referring
well,
to.
there is a certain kind of
something. I read it, they get to something and everyone's like attacking each other and stuff like that.
There's a certain tendency, yeah. It's like the Dharma bros who get on these websites and sort of like criticize each other or put people down, something like that. But I find it actually in Sutta Central more so than other forums that there are, you might be lucky enough to attract the attention of people who are very good scholars who could help to either affirm or guide to the question you have. I've been able to discover such very interesting and high quality conversations from time to time. Or else you can just do what you're doing now and be a solo Buddha scholar reading the suttas and thinking in your own way about them. Yeah. Thank you for that, and thank you for saying what needed to be said about the two sections of the Satipatthana Sutta. We've come up to the end of our time, and I'm very grateful that for your patient listening. I'm especially grateful to see um, a few people that we don't always see right here, so we're happy to see you, and this is a good group. Dhamma friendship is precious to all of us. So let us give respect to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantam Abhivademi Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhamman Namasami Suparipanno Bhagavato Savakasamdo Sangham Namami. Okay, thank you for listening.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.